Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California, you're listening to the Unsugarcoated podcast with your host, Ollie Alanius.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unsugarcoated with Alia, your favorite, and I mean favorite, social good podcast. We're here to talk about another conversation that I know you'll be interested to have. But before I do that, I do want to remind you guys that you can support Unsugarcoated Media by going to our website, unsugarcoatedmedia.com/shop. You can support us there, and just remember, all proceeds go back into our nonprofit social enterprise, allowing us to continue creating social impact through storytelling. The subject today, leading men, right? We all love them, but the reality is I'm not talking about the ones in the movie. I'm talking about the ones in our community, the ones that are making a difference. And for me, as a person who happens to be a minority, I'm often plagued by challenging other people's limiting beliefs of what I can and cannot do, often because of my ethnicity as well as my gender. So I thought it would be a fantastic idea to bring two very well accomplished men that I happen to know who have done extraordinary things and happen to be part of the BIPOC community. When it comes to the workplace, gender and ethnicity are factors in hiring and even the firing process. I care about the people that are told they won't succeed or that they won't get as far in their dreams as their dreams can take them, simply because of the color of their skin or their background. I firmly believe that we have always been in a day where truly people should have been judged for what they bring to the table, what their capabilities are, but instead we haven't. But here we are in a day and age where many, many people in the minority community are rising up. They are shattering, breaking down those fences and everything that's there that's saying, oh no, this is what the standard is. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce two extraordinary men to you, and we'll get started with that right now. Okay. So Jason Jimenez started his entrepreneur journey selling blow pops in elementary school, and it was at the age of 12 he stepped into the space of entrepreneurship. He currently owns two holding companies, and he is a visionary, thought leader, and holds several business accolades, including winner of the 2020 Best of the Best as top 3 insurance agencies in Houston, Texas by the Houston Chronicle. He helped raise over $7 million that directly impacted people who experienced tragic events in life. And in 2021, Jason created the Hope Foundation, helping other people every day. Today, he is the host of the Bold Savior podcast, Making the Impossible Possible in Business, where he focuses on sharing the stories of business owners in America and globally, which are committed to seeking the next business to save. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my first guest, Mr. Jason Jimenez. Hi, Jason. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So happy. Thank you. And our second guest, ladies and gentlemen, Fredrick Douglas Bussey is an investor, founder, business, and leadership expert, international speaker, and author and luminary. He coaches entrepreneurs and executives to unleash the power of their gift and create extraordinary results with the uniqueness that only they can bring to the world. Icon Status, the consultancy he founded, helps brands and individuals to tell their stories in more powerful ways and to initiate opportunities with an outlier perspective that delivers transformative results. Author of the book Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within, he is passionate about leading others to develop their skill set for success while attaining the freedom that entrepreneurship provides. Frederick resides in Atlanta, Georgia with his wife and 3 young children, and here to share his wisdom and knowledge on this topic, please welcome Mr. Fredrick Douglas Bussey. I'm so sorry, Frederick. How are you? Welcome.
I'm doing well, Alia. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen. So I have to give the background a little bit for the audience. I met you both on Clubhouse. Everybody's heard about Clubhouse. Jason, I'm going to go to you first. How did you end up on Clubhouse? And from a business perspective, which is kind of general, what has it been like for you? What has it added for you?
So there's a friend of mine who for some reason thought of me and said, hey, you may want to check this out. And he sent me the text, and I said, okay, I'll get to it when I can. And then I think 2 weeks went by, and then I clicked on it, and it was about 7 p.m. I got on it. I found the room where we all met, and the $1 million club. And I listened to it from 7 a.m. until 4 a.m. because it was that rich of information. And that's when I got pretty much really embraced it. From a business perspective, my life has not been the same. The both of you are just a prime example of that. My life has elevated not only the quality of life of the human beings that I've been so graciously part of. The content and information that has been brought to me has been incredible. And it has also tested my ability to keep discipline on what needs to be focused on to the nth degree. And it's taught me things that I'm applying in not only my business, but also how to integrate Clubhouse as part of the model of what I'm already already doing. And that has been really a blessing.
I'm going to get into the integrating Clubhouse with the business, but Frederick, you know, how did you get on? And really quick, I do have to insert this, you guys, to the audience. These gentlemen are highly, highly experienced. And when they speak so eloquently. I mean, I have to say this as a person who shares the stage with them and speaks myself. But there are definitely those people when I hear them speak, I'm like, oh my goodness, can I grow up and be you? And these are definitely two of those gentlemen. So Frederick, yeah, like your story, how did you end up on Clubhouse? And what has it brought to value in your business?
Well, something similar to Jason. I had a friend of mine who's actually a business partner. He was telling me about his experience on Clubhouse, and I had seen people, this was near the end of the year, and people had started clamoring for Clubhouse invites and that type of thing. And he had one, he sent me one. And I hopped on there, and my initial response, I did spend a good deal of time. It was around Christmas Day. So I was kind of with family. In the first couple of weeks, I'm on there listening, and my wife was giving me strange looks and things of that nature. And so I phased out on it a little bit. And, but I ended up in the $1 Million Business Club with Jason and you, Alia. And that was because I had actually interviewed the founders of the club, Kate Hancock. I interviewed her on my podcast a few months earlier, and we'd maintained a relationship. And so they kept inviting me to come into the room, and eventually, this was a marathon room initially for like 20 days. They set a record, and then somebody tried to break it, and so they just recently set another one. They went 85 days in a row with one room. And just the quality of the individuals in there who are giving advice and speaking and sharing with one another is unmatched. For a free platform, it's just incredible. And the relationships that I've built there, the business, I found a mentor for one of the businesses that I was launching, and now it's turning into potential multi-million-dollar deals. It's just unbelievable, really.
That's
and
amazing.
So it's difficult to quantify exactly. I'm sure Jason would co-sign this. We probably won't even be able to quantify the value of Clubhouse in our lives and our businesses for years. So
Right. I can understand that. I relate to that. So, I want to get to some of the business brass tacks about how men can be leading, not only in the business and the family, but before that, I do want to kind of step back and talk about your background stories. And I definitely gave the resume, but you're both men who are quite distinguished. And I'm sure you've come across your own obstacles. Maybe you've come across a moment that somebody had their set of beliefs and they tried to project or impose that onto you as an individual who's part of a minority. Was there a moment when you said, no, like hell no, as a matter of fact, like keeping it unsugarcoated, I'm doing this? Have either of you, can you think of a moment where you actually experienced that in your up to this point? I'll go to Jason first.
So there was always three things growing up until my age of 20, that there was, my life was always about business subliminally. And what I mean by that is my father would always take me to appointments because he couldn't afford daycare per se. So I was either sitting in a conference room or in the reception area or right outside the door of a client's office. And so for me, watching that really impacted the way I looked at things, how I spoke, how I interacted. And I think it came to a point where at one point in time, I knew I wanted three things in my life. I wanted something of my own, and it doesn't mean I have to own it 100%. I wanted something that was with unlimited income, and I was going to be the only thing that was going to limit that. And I wanted something to be of service to another human being. And it wasn't until my father took me to an appointment. I worked with him when I started at the age of 15. And then I went to a point where he took me to an appointment that changed my life. Walking into it, I saw him as an insurance broker. I saw him as a salesman. I saw him as a business owner. Walking out, I saw him as another human being, being there for another human being at a greatest time of need. He was there delivering a life insurance check. And it changed the perspective. And it showed me really what it meant to be in the insurance realm. And that was the defining moment. Even when opportunities were limited, because I was 2021 when I started the company. But I didn't know when, didn't know what until that one moment. And that was my defining moment.
Wow. Frederick, you've had an amazing history in the music industry, entertainment. You've been a songwriter at times in your life and a producer. Is there a moment that stands out where someone tried to challenge where you can go and do?
Yeah, I'm sure. My path to entrepreneurship was actually sparked because of the music industry, because I grew up singing in a boy band now, we call it a singing group. And we were pursuing this record deal, this ever elusive record deal. And so I went to college, but I was still moonlighting on the weekends. And after college, we were still performing all over the country and things of that nature, just chasing this deal. And so it was such a priority for me that I started looking at how I could break away from the 9 to 5, the job where you had to be there, if you had to work on the weekends, or if you had to work on, be there early on Monday morning. And so that was a challenge for me. So I started looking at entrepreneurial ventures, and that's how I ended up buying a commercial cleaning franchise. And it was an eye-opening experience for me, because to that point, I really didn't know what entrepreneurship was. To own your own business, to make your own schedule, to make your own path forward, right? I just knew that I would have more flexibility. And so I got baptized in that whole world. And that's what really changed things around for me. In terms of obstacles, I think the music industry itself, the way that it was constructed, this is the early 2000s, but I was coming up in the 90s when we were pursuing this deal. That was the thing to be able to, to get vetted, to have a gatekeeper that would allow you in. And the transition for me was when I realized, I made the connection between being an entrepreneur and between being taking your own future into your own hands in terms of the music industry. And so I started realizing, hey, I can just do this thing myself, right? And so I started charting a course forward instead of waiting for people to make opportunities or to allow me to do things. It really shifted the perspective for me. So that was probably the moment when I started realizing, oh, this doesn't just have to be a side gig. This can be a business. I can grow this as big as I want to, or I can do another one or another one.
Right.
And that's where that's the path that I've kind of charted ever since.
I can appreciate that a lot. Both of you currently work at businesses which you founded. I mean, you just shared a little bit about what drew you to entrepreneurship, but for you, Jason, like how important was it to be an entrepreneur, rather than being employed at another company?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I know it. I don't even know if I know the difference, because I grew up with the perspective that everything was possible. What I didn't realize was what I did realize is that I knew those three things were important to me, and I couldn't do that under working through an organization that I couldn't be self-expressive.
Right.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I needed to be self-expressive.
Yeah.
Regardless if it was right, wrong, or indifferent, I needed to try. And it wasn't until my mother at the age of, so my father did what he did. 6 months later, when I was working with them and I was running their company at around 20, my mom did the second thing that changed my projection, which it came from the perspective that she said, why don't you try this yourself? And I said, I don't know if I could do this. And she said, what the hell do you have to lose? And it was not the words, it was the way it landed. And it really has catapulted everything that I've done from that moving forward. Because she then said, ask yourself, what's worse? If you try it, what's possible? What could come of it? And if you don't try it, what are you leaving on the table? And then ask yourself what's worse. And that has been everything in my life. The only difference between a 21-year-old versus a 43-year-old today is life experience, wisdom. And I know that if I jump from a second-story building, it's going to hurt.
Hell yeah, it's going to hurt. Oh my goodness, yes. Okay, life and balancing. So Frederick, how has family life affected the way you view business or your career?
Oh, it's fundamentally changed it. When I was in the music industry, you're just thinking about doing music 24/7. It's just about getting to the next thing. And now I have, I have 3 little ones. I've been married for 11 years. So family is the main priority. And, I know Jason can relate to this. When you're an entrepreneur, all you do is you think about business all the time. Being able to turn it off can be a challenge because you're always thinking about that. But the thing that I've really come to realize a lot more the last, probably since the pandemic, is that, I've worked from home for the last 9 years. And so I've always been at home. But having children now, as they evolve in their schedules and they need time and attention and presence, and maintaining a marriage that's fulfilling requires time and effort. And so being able to put those priorities first and fit the business inside of that is the most important thing. It's challenging and it can be frustrating because you can feel like I need more time to do this. I've got to do that, but learning how to not balance the two, but prioritize them so that I am fully present where I need to be at the time that I need to be present is the biggest thing. So for instance, before I jumped on here, I was cutting my son's hair, right? So I've got to make sure that I'm doing that, taking care of that because I'm going out of town. He's got to be presentable for this weekend. They're going on a little swimming party. So I got to take care of that. But then now I'm getting dressed and I'm here for this, right? And so I can be fully present here, and then I'll go back and be fully present with my family. And that's the challenge, the real balance. I mean, Clubhouse probably tested that the most, but that's it for me. It's not a balance. It is I guess hopping. You're hopping on one foot then another, right? You're always on one foot. Or if you would call it hopscotch, when you're just kind of landing in one square versus trying to make it all one square and you just fully, you can't give your attention to everything at once. And so just trying to be focused on being present where I need to be at the time when I need to be there.
I love that you say that because, of course, even before, Jason, so I'm going to kick this question to you. When managing everything and you can ultimately lose your cool, how do you not? How do you stay? I love, and by the way, Frederick, I love that you said, I love that you made the difference, the distinction between balance and prioritizing. Because for me, I know, that's like going out on date night, but then being on your phone, right? Like right. You think you're balancing, but in that effort, you're making your partner feel like you don't matter enough, to be quite honest, in many cases. Mm-hmm. So Jason, when everything's going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, how do you keep your cool? As a business owner.
I go crazy.
You go crazy and then you bring it back. Right?
what it is, Frederick said it so right. To me, there is no such thing as balance. It's just being present wherever you're at, right? And if you can do that, even at moments when it's really difficult because of technology and the fact that everybody wants you, or whether it be family, work, or whoever else needs your attention, it's being able to look at the person and say, no, I'm here with you, and make sure that they feel it, especially when it comes to family, right? Because I can tell you that I've had to learn that. I've had to I've had to be able to ask my wife one day, I was like, what is it that you want from me? And I'm scared to ask her. And I'm thinking I'm going to get this list of like 50 things, right? And she only said one. I just want your time. I want you.
Yeah. That's of course, exactly. And time is the most valuable thing that we have. Yeah. And our partners crave it so much from us. You're both amazing leading men, and I love that's the theme of this entire episode, leading men in families and communities. So you spend a gracious amount of your time on Clubhouse giving a wealth of knowledge. We can't fit it all here into this 50 minutes, guys. But you can go on there and check them out, follow them individually, and listen to them when they do have the opportunity to speak. But going back to you guys, let's talk about you guys go in there, you give this time, you give this effort, recognizing that we're not only talking about business, but we're talking about business during a pandemic. How has entrepreneurship, in each of yours opinion, and I'll start with you, Frederick, how has entrepreneurship changed as a result of the pandemic? Gosh, I said that so dun dun dun, right? The pandemic, guys. Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Well, honestly, I think that the pandemic is just, it has put entrepreneurship into a microcosm, in that this is what it always has been, is that it's been figuring it out when life smacks you in the face. One of the things that I hear a lot of people talking about, they want to ask, well, how do I create a business plan? Or, business plans are for banks. You can plan all you want to. But when I'm advising entrepreneurs and clients, I'm not so much trying to give them the next thing to do as I have a framework for how to think about it, because that is the thing that is most showing up. And you ask how entrepreneurship has changed. I think that it is exposed that it's not just about this new hot biz op or new tactic or building a funnel or, start an online business. Like, what does that even mean? Like, business is about people and relationships. I think that more than ever, it's going to highlight that, and it's going to reward those who think differently, those who are able to think about their thinking and to be able to pivot off of beliefs that they've held, that have been held for decades or centuries even, because things are changing so rapidly, and the future is being accelerated towards us. You're gonna have to be able to pivot as quickly as possible. And that requires you to be able to think on your feet, to develop your instincts. And I think, if anything, it's not so much that entrepreneurship has changed, it's exposed what it is. And it's forcing entrepreneurs to level up or be eliminated.
Agreed. Jason?
So I believe that our greatest moments are when we're pushed against the wall. That is when our best version comes out, right?
Yes.
It's no different that if someone keeps pushing me against the wall and it eventually starts hurting. And when it really hurts, when I mean really hurts, life in general, just your life cycle, your ability to survive just starts kicking in. You will push back. You will claw back. You will bite. Because it's either life or death. And if you have children, if you have family, if you have people that work with you, that that your decisions impact other people's lives, yeah, there's no choice. And I feel that the best version of people's selves comes out because they didn't realize. It's kind of like doing push-ups or doing a workout, and your trainer's like, you can give me one more. And you're like, where? And eventually you're doing 15 more because you had no idea you had it in you.
Right.
That is those, even as dark as it is, or how bad it is in the pandemic, I'll have to say that I'm grateful for it. Now, granted, I have closed 2 businesses during the pandemic. One of them because one of my business partners passed away from COVID, and he managed the operations. I managed the operations. He managed all the outward bound, getting the clients and whatnot. The other one was simply because it was truly affected. We catered, a staffing agency that we catered to hotels and restaurants, which, as we all know, was most affected. And it taught me a lot of things. But it taught me to look from a different perspective because I was forced to look at things in a different light. And walking through it and going through it, yeah, it was horrible. And looking back, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I want to say that I've talked about this before, I think on Clubhouse, but one of the corporate jobs I had in my earlier times was for an organization that, after 9/11, we were called and said, I was actually the site manager, and they said in San Francisco, we were right by Candlestick Park, and they said, we need a business resumption plan. Now that we've had this tragedy in our country, we know we're vulnerable, right? And it was a very big learning, and everyone was on this heightened sense of how they operated and just in case. And then I feel in many ways, as Frederick, you spoke to, really what this has shown is we should have been ready. At this stage, with everything that we had, and we were probably much better off than people in the 1918 version of a pandemic. But for this and where we were at, yeah, I mean, it did force a lot of people to have to pivot. I want to ask, your guys' thoughts on failing forward as a result of what Jason had said. But I also want to point out that when we do kind of take it back to the conversation of what people in the BIPOC community actually do experience, minorities. I mean, at this point, according to an Aspen Institute study of racial wealth and business ownership, it concluded that Hispanic and Black Americans have levels of net worth roughly 10% of that held by white Americans. These are not statistics that we can, we clearly see big gaps between minorities and white individuals that have why right now in this moment in time, why do you think that gap is still so big? I mean, Frederick, I'm curious your thoughts on that. And then actually after that, I'll go back to the failing forward. I'm not going to forget that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
And this subject is so it's layered. If I was to summarize it, I would say that it's probably mostly rooted in the lack of exposure. And when I say lack of exposure, I don't mean that it's not lack of information, because the information is there, but there is a level of exposure to understanding what is really possible, right? So there's a lot of systemic issues in terms of racism and oppression and things of that nature. But the most insidious one is really what it does to the psyche of individuals. And so there are certain limiting beliefs that we just accept as fact. And in order to be a successful entrepreneur of any color, you have to be able to completely dismiss that. But if you're an entrepreneur of color, you have to be able to recognize this thing exists and be able to set it to the side and still push forward with unrelenting resolve. And the resilience that it takes is something that's not easy. It has to be developed, and you have to have a certain temperament. One of the reasons why I started coaching was because I just wanted to be able to expose people to what's possible. And sometimes just simply asking a question, right? Asking the right question can unlock possibilities for people. But when you don't know that something is possible, or you don't realize that you have this belief, right? You don't realize that there is a lid on your thinking, then that's the challenge that we're dealing with. Clubhouse even has opened up my eyes, and I thought that I was, evolved and had all this power of potential and possibility in my mindset. And then I just kept getting exposed to more and more people and having conversations with them and interviewing them. And people like Jason, who have opened up my own perspective on how to think about certain things and what's possible for myself, for others, collaboration. That's really, we have to start taking the lid off of it, because if you look at Clubhouse, if you just look at your phone, for instance, and maybe you're not on Clubhouse, but if you see the app, you can see the people that are in the rooms, right? And if you look at certain rooms with people of color and the conversations that they're having, and then the predominantly, other populated rooms, it's a completely different conversation, right? And so I have friends that have never gone into certain rooms with me, and I can tell the difference, because they're just not having the conversations on the same levels. And it's not that we're not capable, it's just that we're not exposed to that level of thinking, with the combination of the fact that it's possible for us.
Oh, I love that, because, one thing that's very interesting to me about the fact that it's also voice. Everyone connects in such a way that's so much quicker, so much more authentic. I mean, I genuinely mean that. I've shared many times being part of the community through Facebook, which was cool, but that was still typing. So to just quickly develop a community sense and like you said, the collaborations that have come from it, I find it, and as you guys spoke to how it's done for business, I think it's incredibly important. People do not dismiss that value at all. Failing forward. I love this. Jason, you triggered that thought on my end. Tell me your definition of failing forward.
You never stop moving. There's a difference between we've all heard this, or hopefully people have heard the fact that we are born, but yet that's the day one that we start dying from day one, right? There's a life cycle. And I believe in, if you stay still, if you don't move, your mind doesn't move, your internal emotions don't move, your creativity doesn't move, and you wither away. I look at my grandmother passed away 2 years ago, and I could tell you that even as our elders, the reason why they stay so active is because the one thing that keeps them moving and alive is their brain. And when we understand that reading, watching videos that are pushing the envelopes, if you are around individuals that are pushing you to think and or to question, all of that is just, to me, falling forward.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, at the end of the day, the differentiation between people being able to move. Frederick used it, opening the access to transformational change, and living in a world of possibility, and understanding that word, and quite frankly, those two words are extremely powerful if they're embraced as intended.
Right. Frederick, failing forward.
Well, we often hear people talk about the fear of failure. And one of the only ways you can really get over that fear is to fail and then realize it didn't kill you. But our brains are so powerful, our minds are so powerful that we can exaggerate the consequences of failure as to be so dire, right, that it's impossible for us to ever imagine going through that thing, or we procrastinate, or we drag our feet. And yet every time we get into action, something magical happens. There is electricity, there's energy that happens when you take action. God, the universe, it conspires with you to teach you lessons, right? And there's just things that you can see when you take a step forward that you couldn't see when you were one step behind. And you have to learn that lesson. And honestly, that fear of failure is programmed into us from a young age. Because when we're born, we're not born with fear. We have to learn it. You know, I remember when my son was just an infant, you know, if you threw something at him, he didn't even put up his hands to block it, you know, because he didn't know that if it hit him, it was going to hurt. And now if you throw something at an individual, they're likely to blink, right? Or to duck, because they've been taught to be afraid of things hitting them. Yeah. And the most unnatural thing for a boxer to do is have to learn to take the punch in the face, right? You're going to get hit. How many times you get hit in a boxing match? You know, hundreds of times, right?
Yeah,
you have to learn.
So.
So you have to learn to be afraid, not to be afraid of getting hit when you do get hit. You want to dodge the punches, but you also have to learn that I've got to be able to absorb a blow. And so to me, that is failing forward. It's being able to take a punch and to give a punch, to take a punch, to set up a better punch, right? And just to keep moving forward. There was a movie, a boxing movie, actually, and it's talking about just keep getting hit, and to keep moving forward. It's Creed, when Rocky's talking about, you know, that's the definition of it. You've got to learn how to take a punch and just keep moving forward. And that's the thing, you learn from every punch you take. And the biggest thing, I just circle back to it, is that it's not going to kill you. You know, the things that we're most afraid of are the things that we should fear the least. And the thing that we should fear the most is not getting better every day, is not realizing our potential, is not walking in our gift. Because there is no greater failure than to not realize who you were created to be.
Wow. I love that. See, yeah. This is why, guys. This is why. I love that. And, you know, you have all this knowledge now. I want to ask, is there one thing, and especially with the fact that business owners, you know, is there one particular thing that you wish you had been taught at the start? You know, I mean, I feel like I could answer that I know when people ask me that question quite often, I'm like, oh, there's a whole list of things, but just one, you know, just one, because I feel like it's such a process that you grow in, learn and evolve and step into it. So, you know, for Jason, you know, what was one lesson you wish you had learned that you've learned in your career now that you wish you had at the start?
The importance of the utilization of funds, finances. The ability to understand the responsibility of having something when you didn't have it before, and you making whatever your amount. I'm a 21-year-old making $100,000, and you're like, oh, well, it's going to keep coming in, and then until it doesn't, and then you're wondering like, oh, damn, right? It hurts, and I was taught what was known. What I didn't know is that there was a better way, because no one showed them that there was a better way. It was because of the fact that I was fortunate enough and eager enough to meet and learn what I didn't know through people who were quite frankly really good at it, and having things that I wanted and thought I needed, to determine the reality that, oh, it's okay to not have to go and pay for whatever or buy this. You don't need it. There's a difference between want and need. And also understanding that if I purchase something, if I spend money on something, there's a difference between spending something and buying something that is committed to that is consistent to what you're committed to, versus just doing it because it gives you pleasure. Right. And people don't do that. People, as a matter of fact, what I have learned, and I teach and I coach on, almost it seems like every day, is that if people would look at their bank account and they ask the question, why do I have XYZ at the end of the month? People fail to look back in the last 2 months of how they utilize their funds.
Right. They
only look forward. They never look backwards. And your past puts you where you're at today. So if you can realize that is a fact, you cannot deny that. Just shift.
Right.
And that's where I think that's why I wish I would have been taught that sooner.
I love that. And I definitely agree with you. And it's funny, you said the want versus need. My son, one time I was walking out of the store and we were inside the store and there was something, this is more personal, but but the way that I think, and we're walking out of the store and he says to me, Mom, why didn't you get that vase? You put it back before we left. And I just looked at him and I said, it's because I wanted it. I didn't need it right now. I think about what I have. And, I'm a person who I share my story. I was homeless at 14. So everything that I have now is funny to me because, I love Denzel's quote, you don't see a U-Haul behind a hearse. So I will say the way that I live to a certain extent is a little bit more minimalized than people would think, But I love that you say that. And also even kind of going back before, I'm going to ask you yours, Frederick, but I love how you brought up the boxer. We've talked about where people tell me I can't focus. And, boxing always brings me to that moment of when they say, if you're a boxer and you get in the ring, you can focus really quick on not getting hit in the face. So to everyone who's like, I just can't focus. Bullshit. Sorry, if we can curse. I'm calling you out. I'm saying, no, you can't. Frederick, what's one lesson that you wish you had at the start?
I love what Jason shared. That was really good. The ability to look back over your month. That was great. For me, it would be what's possible. I wish that I knew that it was possible to build bigger, that I didn't have to know it all or do it all to build something that was incredible. Obviously today, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 plus years. It's much easier now to build something than it was before. But really once you have something, once you're clear on what your why is, and I started a business for a why that was very different than it is now. It wasn't very evolved. I wanted to be able to make money and sustain so I could build my dream. But over time, becoming an entrepreneur where I was sustaining myself by working for myself, it created this whole other mindset. I remember somebody asked me one day, I had my franchise for a couple of years maybe. And they asked me what I did, where you work? And I said, I work for myself. I have my own business. And the look on their face, sticks with me today. And they were just like, you own your own business? Like, looking at this young guy. And I was maybe 28, 29 by then, but it was uncommon. And a lot more people today, they claim to be entrepreneurs and they work for themselves and they have this lifestyle. I was, cleaning toilets at night and vacuuming office buildings and things of that nature, but I owned my time. I made my own schedule. I paid the bills with the money that I created. And even still, I didn't realize what was possible. Like, it wasn't just this business. I could build any business that I wanted to if I was clear on what I was out to create. And I think that's something that certainly I know that Jason has shared with people, and I try to impart to people every day. Like, if you are clear, super, super clear on why you're doing what you're doing, then there's nothing that can stop you. It just isn't. Because especially in this climate today, even in the pandemic, you can build anything that you want if you're clear on why you want to do it and you know that it's possible. And I wish that I had known that many years ago. I am making up for lost time as best I can, but I'm also taking that lesson to heart. And it's to Jason's point, I've used that looking back to kind of fuel me moving forward.
And in the vein of the looking back thought, looking back at your life and so far, because you guys are far from done, I know this, but so far.
I hope so.
Inshallah, absolutely. What is it that when you look back over the shoulder, what's most significant to you right this moment? What's the first thing that comes to mind, Jason?
Wow. First thing that popped into my mind was my kids. My daughter is my mini-me. My 11-year-old is everything that represents love and heart and affection. My 4-year-old is a chewing gum that just does not separate from my leg. And yet he is the one thing that completes me because he was not expected. And it wasn't until he came into my life that made me realize that I had more to give.
Mm-hmm.
And going on to what Frederick was saying, it was that life experience that reminded me, wow, I have more to give. I just didn't see it before. And that's what's present that I'm truly grateful for.
That's extremely powerful because I'm part of a worldwide radio show, and we do a word of the day and most days. And today's was, it's always too early to quit. It's always too early. You don't know how much. I guarantee you there's moments that I know you guys have come up against when it's like, why am I doing this? Like you said, but if if you just gave up and you quit, I don't feel I'm looking at a couple of quitters. I know I'm not a quitter, and I only say that to say of how many people don't recognize how much more you do have to give. Frederick, to you. Yeah.
Looking back, and what's interesting is, despite what Jason shared earlier, we're talking about looking back as an entrepreneur over your money. I don't look back too often. I'm always thinking ahead. I love what he said about his family, because I think that is one of the more significant things too. We homeschool our children now, and I look at how there are certain parallels in our lives and how different they are at the same time. And I look at things that I didn't have that I want to have. So I was myself and my siblings, my 3 siblings, we were all homeschooled by our parents for all 12 years, which is uncommon, back in the 80s to be homeschooled. It was a very rare thing. And I fought it, so much. I wanted to play basketball in high school. I wanted to go talk to girls and have that normal high school experience. And my parents resisted, and I'm so grateful now. And my kids, that's really all they've known for the last 3 years, so much so that the pandemic didn't affect them as much because they were already home. And that was a blessing in disguise. And so the significance of being able to give the children the future based on the past that you didn't have and the foundation that you were blessed enough to have is significant to me. I want to be able to empower them to be able to shift the conversation, to shift other people's lives through their gifts, the way that I have learned to use mine. And I think if I were to boil it down to one thing, the greatest thing that you could give significance is your gift. Your gift is your identity. It's who you are. And pouring that into them, pouring that into my businesses, like the business is just a vehicle to express my gift. It's just a vehicle to be able to exponentially expand the impact, right? And one of the byproducts of that is money. And many people measure the success by the money. I will just be looking to measure the impact. I will hopefully be able to say that it's made a significant amount of money, but the money isn't the motivator. The significant thing is being able to show up every day, every single day, and just know that I was in my purpose. And that's what I want to leave in my children, to know that they are living and walking with purpose in this world.
I love that. And I see what you guys are doing. It's funny. Money motivates a lot of people, but the Clubhouse factor has so many amazing individuals like yourself, both of you, who give your time, which in the regular world is worth a lot dollar-wise, but you give it. I see that impact that you're creating with these other young entrepreneurs from all over the world. And you're helping them. You're helping the guy who's just got an idea in his head. You're helping the person who's midway through it. You're helping scale from I'm a self-sustaining small business to the next level. What is your favorite part, Jason? And also then share with us where people can support you and where they can support you and where we can stay connected with you.
Yeah. So this world, since the pandemic and Clubhouse being a technology that has really done several things, I think, for everyone. One, the world is that much smaller now, and yet it's that much bigger. Going to something that Frederick mentioned earlier was the word possibility is limitless now. No excuses, especially for those that are embraced Clubhouse in the goodness that it actually allows it for. It is, quite frankly, Clubhouse is the reason why I now have a group of individuals, and we opened up our Indonesia office for our cybersecurity company.
Amazing.
Would not have happened. That was not even in my projections 5-10 years from now. It was all about US. It is a gift, and we choose to determine exactly how we utilize it. And I think that for me, what I would like to say is I spend my time there because not only because it was given to me, and then when I'm in the room, I listen just as much as I try to contribute, simply because it fills those three things for me.
Right.
It's a piece of me. I get to own my own room or my own club or my own whatever if I choose to. All of it or none of it, or a piece of it. I have the potential to make unlimited income based on helping and providing guidance and providing consulting and or services to people. I'm the only limitation, and it fills my third thing that I mentioned earlier. It gives me the ability to be there for another human being when they need it. And that is why I've embraced it completely.
Love it. Where can people stay connected with you if you want to tell them your IG name for the listening audience?
I'm on Instagram. It's Jason Jimenez INS, and that is primarily where I'm at. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty vocal out there, and I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, Frederick, so what's your favorite thing, and where can we support and help you out?
Oh man, my favorite thing. These are a few of my favorite.
In 1 minute or less, by the way. Very Clubhouse of me. 30 seconds, go.
30 seconds. What's my favorite thing? My favorite thing, I think, is daydreaming. It's a luxury that I don't often get to have. But kind of going back to what I was saying before about possibilities and not knowing what was possible, daydreams for me now are very different, because now a daydream can turn into a strategy session. It's literally the question of, I wonder, and then it's, why not? And then what would it take to make that possible? And because of Clubhouse, it's literally as simple as a conversation for somebody that I've just met, being in a room with people. And I want to give us credit, the three of us credit, for being aligned enough to recognize what the opportunity was, because there are a lot of people on Clubhouse right now who are not taking advantage of it. It's not just Clubhouse. It can be anywhere, because the possibilities are endless wherever you are if you're open to seizing them. But I'm grateful. I'm just so grateful that we weren't too selfish enough to not recognize the gift that it was to be able to hear conversations and learn. Jason runs an incredible club. He's a co-founder of a club, Landing Wells. I don't want to misname, but I want to plug that, because the information in there for people who want to build relationships and to land bigger deals, it's unbelievable. The people he's got in there that are sharing that information, you just can't find that anywhere else. I mean, you would have to be thinking of that and hope that there was a podcast or a video out there, enough information, but this is inside baseball. It's stuff that you can't. And so I'm extremely grateful for that, and just grateful for opportunities each and every day. I'm just humbled by it, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what the next year is going to be. I never would have thought, this is over 30 seconds. I'm way over.
I know.
But I never would have thought in the midst of 2020 that we would be here now. And I just want to, for those who are listening, a lot of people have been waiting to go back to life as normal, to resume business, as you were saying, Alia. But, we've got the Delta variant and potentially the Lambda variant after that. You don't know that you're going to get the opportunity to do things the way that you always done it before. So stop expecting that. Create a new way to do things and always create that intention to be aware and to be flexible enough to pivot when you need to be. So I did not answer your question.
No, I love it. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. This is our amazing leading men, everyone. I want to thank you both for being with us. I so appreciate your time, your energy, what you're giving back to the community, and what you're setting as a standard is amazing because you're letting other people know, hey, this is possible. So I appreciate you both. Thank you so much for being here. To the audience, we are out of time, but I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget to come back next week. Thank you so much for letting us be unsugarcoated. Bye.
What are you still doing here? Come back next week.